All right, welcome back, everybody. We have a brand new trial coming our way out of Osceola County, Florida, for accused family murderer Anthony Todt. Now, he's facing a life sentence for the 2019 murders of his wife, 3 children, and family dog. Take a look.
A Connecticut man will soon face a Florida jury after authorities say he killed his family inside their Florida home near Walt Disney World in late 2019. Anthony Todt is facing 4 murder charges and an animal cruelty charge for allegedly killing his wife, 42-year-old Megan Todt, their 3 kids, 13-year-old Alexander, 11-year-old Tyler, and 4-year-old Zoe, and the family dog, Breezy. The couple met in high school. They got married, started a family, and a business, living full-time in small-town Colchester, Connecticut. But it all came crashing down when, according to court documents, financial troubles started catching up with Todt. Federal authorities say they discovered alleged fake claims to Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance companies from Todt's physical therapy business. On January 13, 2020, federal authorities and local deputies arrived at the Florida home following calls from family members and the owner of their complex to do a welfare check. With an eviction notice on the front door, inside they found the blanket-wrapped bodies of his wife, children, and family dog. Authorities say the physical therapist lived alongside their rotting bodies for weeks. Toxicology reports later revealed Todt's wife and children were all drugged with Benadryl. The medical examiner determined Megan, Alexander, and Tyler had also been stabbed. Alexander's autopsy described that his feet were mummified as the victims were in an early state of decomposition. The bodies had been locked in the home for so long, no blood was left for testing. But the medical examiner determined their cause of death was homicidal violence of unspecified means in association with antihistamine toxicity. Todt had also taken Benadryl, he says, in an attempt to commit suicide. Todt was indicted on 4 counts of murder. In his post-arrest interviews, Todt reportedly confessed to the killings. A judge recently ruled one confession will be kept out of trial proceedings after Todt's legal team argued he had Benadryl in his system and didn't understand he was waiving his Miranda rights. His defense attorney also argued the interviewing deputy recited an incomplete Miranda warning. Detectives say, though, in another interrogation, Todt repeated his involvement in the deaths. The judge ruled that confession can be used at trial.
The court finds it to be clear that the issue of diminished capacity is inadmissible in the state of Florida in the guilt phase, and the court is going to grant the state's motion. There is case law that supports that any medications that Mr. Todt was on at the time of his confessions should be considered if they are established by competent evidence.
Todt blamed his wife for the slayings in jailhouse letters to his father. His trial was initially scheduled for last year, but has been delayed several times. Prosecutors are no longer seeking the death penalty, so Todt faces life in prison if convicted.
Clearly, Karen, this is a very disturbing case. It also feels like an open and shut case. However, you're hearing what the defense might be, that he provided a false confession and putting the blame on his wife. Walk me through that.
Well, I think that when you don't have anything to argue, you argue what you can. And I think in this particular case, the only other adult in the household was his wife. And so let's point the finger at her. I don't think there's anything that I've read or heard so far that would indicate that she would do anything to harm herself, her children, or the family dog. And she was the one that was raising them primarily. He was out of state. She was with the children and the dog the whole time. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, stranger things have happened, as we've seen in the Bearstone case. You're like, this is open and shut, and then it turns around. So I can't imagine anything that would substantiate that she was the perpetrator, that she killed herself, killed the 3 children, the dog, and then killed herself, but didn't kill him. It doesn't make any sense. So that's the only thing that I can imagine that he could argue. And there's no explanation as to why he would remain in the house other than the fact that he might be having some mental challenges, but those can't come up, the court found, until possibly the guilt phase.
Right.
I mean, the penalty phase,
Right.
and it looks like we're going to get to that.
Well, Dr. Pearson, let me ask you about the idea here of the defense, going against the investigators and saying, well, you read him a wrong Miranda warning, and yeah, okay, one confession's going to come in, but we're going to attack it nonetheless, and said that he was pressured into saying all of this. We've seen that argument happen before. I don't know. The details of this are going to have to be coming out in trial. How effective can that be?
It's up to, obviously, a jury to weigh the credibility of whether or not that confession was pressured. Generally speaking, that isn't something that holds up with juries. But the fact that one confession was tossed out does help him. I think that the idea that the wife would stab herself just is illogical. And as Karen said, you argue facts, you argue the best case you can. If anything seems to cry out for an insanity defense in some ways, it's this. I mean, I can't imagine living in a building, in a house with, decomposing bodies. But I suppose, there are people.
This is one of the worst ones. I'm going to tell you right now, one of the worst ones that we've covered here on Law&Crime.
Physical fights?
Baby!
Because you start physical fights?
Now, not only does Depp deny any of these allegations, but he is claiming that he is the victim of abuse.
You hit me last night.
No, and you hit back, so don't act like you don't
I
participate.
pushed you.
Truth is an absolute defense to a claim of defamation.
This trial is as star-studded as it gets. Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Tune into the Law&Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage.